Okay. Hello. It was really warm in Pittsburgh yesterday, and today it's a lot, I was like boobies, a lot colder, and I'm in the process of washing all of my comfy warm clothes, but I have this crumb onesie, armpit hair included, from Halloween, I think the year before last, and it is warm, and it is going to serve our needs right now. So, hello. Yes, today, I had to think of what was happening. Today's video is on our weekly collective energy, which is the buffalo, and I super love the buffalo energy. It's a card that comes to me quite often enough that I really feel that connection when it comes up of having this responsive energy. And so the buffalo is here to remind us that we can both be grounded in our realities and what's happening day by day, and really stretching ourselves up towards our dreams, and really understanding that confidence, that ability, that sureness that we can hold space for both of those is because we have gone through a lot of life challenges, things that could have been barriers, but in our own pace, in our own way, we found our way to experience it and get past or through that moment. And so really the sureness or confidence comes from this deep, deep inner knowing that we can navigate many things in life by being the experts of our own opinions, no, experts of our own existence. Yesterday I choked on a big ball of pollen. My throat has been really sad ever since, so I'm gonna take back that in. Anyone else who has allergies, especially people like me who love being outside but have outdoor allergies, I'm holding space for us all. Okay, there we go. Sometimes we just need to take a breath. Okay. The fun thing about bloopers, but being someone who doesn't edit their shit, is that bloopers get to be a part of this. So you don't even have to wait for a highlight reel. You just get to see, my near suffocation experience. Okay. What was I? Yes. So opportunities. And so the buffalo really encourages us to really do something that I do in Improviding, which is rethink the way we approach life, or the way that we're like labeling what the life experience is. And not every moment will be one where we can do this, but it's really about like when it's a fit. And so it's really thinking about re-envisioning. I think of it as re-envisioning the recycle symbol. And so really this is re-envisioning the life experience. And so when Improviding, again, in case you haven't seen any other videos that I mentioned this, is broken down. That word really means that life is providing you with moments to experience, and then you're improvising your response to them. That way you don't have the additional stress, anxiety, fear, confusion, you don't have any pre-existing ideas or sentiments going into a situation or as it's happening. That way you don't try to control what the outcome is. You're able to really let go of that expectation, and then really as the event unfolds, or as you're experiencing that moment, then you're able to be in that moment and respond in a way that really feels intentional, nourishing, aligned with your values or what your goals are, and objectives with that theme it might be associated with are. And so that way, this really gets us out of autopilot. Because a quick recap, autopilot is what really disconnects us from ourselves. And that's, I believe, an intentional part of the systems we're a part of is that autopilot, because then we can't challenge the system. And then over time, we don't realize the weight of those systems on us, because we get really normalized. We normalize our situations thinking of, oh, well, it always happens. And while the systemic things always happen, yes, that's not to discount that and what the experience is too. It's really about ending that and saying, yes, this is very real. It's impacting me in a very real way. And I have a few tools, resources, tips that I can try to use to create space So that way there's some a buffer between the weight of that systemic shit happening all the time and the way it's impacting me. And so if we can't change the system overnight, I wish we could, but since we cannot, how can we create space to really process the weight of that system on us? So then that way over time, we can leverage ourselves or like transition into positions where we can impact systemic change. So that's the over the high overview of what improviding is, what my beliefs behind it are, and where it came from. But so back to the re-envisioned like life cycle, and this moment to momentness is really first receiving the stimulation that's happening, the event that's happening, just receiving what that is feeling like for you, what it looks like, what event is literally happening, who is it happening with or from, just receiving this information. And then reflection. And so it's really realizing that because we want to be intentional and not automatically categorize this as something that it might have been in the past or what we perceived it to be in the past, this reflection time lets us actually experience the moment. And there are moments where this can be very painful and difficult, but by doing that, we're actually giving our bodies a moment to have the mic, and they're able to say, oh shit, this is upsetting your stomach, or oh, you're feeling a lot of tension in your neck now, oh, you're clenching your jaw, or you're super stoked and this is a great opportunity. You know, it's our bodies can communicate so much, but we're conditioned to receive and then respond right away, and respond from a very intellectualized headspace. And so once we're able to reflect, then we can respond with intention. And some of those factors might include like what is going to provide you the most safety, especially if you're in a situationship with survival mode, and especially with the chronic oppressions, that is really going to be positioning you in survival mode quite often. So like honoring the impact or weight that that has on you. So making sure that you're responding in a way that keeps you safe, responding in a way that allows you to maybe have a further connection with that person you might be speaking to, because maybe you like are reacquainting after a while, whatever the situation is. Again, being in that moment and improvising your response allows you to take into consideration something that might be more nuanced or something that might be unique to that situation or that moment. And so again, those responses can be something that like respects your energy. So like not saying yes to taking on this huge project when you're already overbooked. It's really being able to check in, make sure that it's a fit, and then giving that response back out. And sometimes the response is, I need more time, or some other questions. Maybe it's, I'm interested, but maybe next month. It can be any, like the only, I would say, invalid response would be a response that is given out of obligation that then is going to give you a lot of that like self-loathing, self-doubt, like those types of feelings afterwards. And I wouldn't really even call that invalid. That's just you did the best you could at that moment. But Improviding and this buffalo energy combining together is really saying like you actually have a wealth of knowledge within you. How can you just slow down just a little bit, be grounded into reality and what the moment is, and knowing that you can actually just stretch the fuck out. You can literally just reach so far. And that doesn't mean that you have to have the extra pressure of, oh, well, this reaching means it has to materialize right away. It's really just saying, I'm giving myself permission to believe that what I would like to experience in the future is possible. And so it's really coming from a place of inner knowing. But again, we have to do the work of inner knowing because we are so conditioned out of knowing. And so really giving yourself grace that everyone is on a different like part of their path. And it's not one path. Everyone has their own path. And so comparison can be really challenging with that. But it's really honoring that you are in the place you are and you are the expert of your own experience. You know what has been in the past, you know what's in the current, but perhaps there's some room to expand your perception of your story, of really knowing which parts come from someone else that were given to you and that you were expected to take on. And so out of doing the best you could at that time and what you were conditioned to do, you did take those things on. And over time, that inner work then allows you to know what is yours, what you want to keep, what chapters you're able to leave aside. I like to think of it as having 86 bags on you, and there's straps everywhere, and you don't really know what's in them anymore, but you just have all this luggage and it weighs so much. Then you realize, oh, I don't really need to carry this one part anymore. And you start unpeeling. And then peeling, sometimes it is just chucking it into the abyss, but you get to a place where you actually are unpacking, you're looking in, oh, this one is old X stories. That was 42 years ago, I don't need that. And then you can release and process and really have those experiences be what they are, as informational. Okay, open this next one. Oh, this is actually that really snide, shitty comment my cousin made yesterday. I still need more time to process this. I'm gonna zip this back up. Okay, at least I know what this bag is, and suddenly it feels lighter because you know the contents, you know that it is impacting you, you know that this is something that does need to be addressed. And again, you have received that comment, you're reflecting on it, and you're able to say, this feels shitty, this, my icky meters, I like to think of it as going off, and you're taking the time to reflect on what way of responding feels really accurate to how you're feeling. And so in that way, you're able to shift the weight of those bags as you're able to release some of them. And because what happens otherwise is all of a sudden you are Mount Everest of carrying all this shit. And that it just takes such a toll energetically, spiritually, emotionally. It really then, I like to think that as the more bags you have, the less of you have in many ways, because you become engulfed in everything that you've experienced. And all of these experiences are valid. Everything that you've experienced and the impact it has on you and how you experience it is totally valid. But how can you nurture yourself to really be able to bear the weight of all of that and realize that you shouldn't be expected to hold on to it alone and hold on to all of it always. And so this is all connected to the buffalo. Really knowing that there are ways that some obstacles that come up are actually things that you are so equipped to respond to in the best way for you. And so it is not dismissing that the obstacles there, it's yes-anding. It's like, yes, this challenge is here, and within myself or my support network or something I've read online that I can go back and access within everything that I also have experienced that feels positive, pro-social, and encouraging, equips me to go through this obstacle and to... My puppy said, there's something outside. Yeah, it's so funny. The first time I put this on, they like freaked out, understandably. But yeah, it's really about yes-anding and like this. I know that eventually it's sirens, that they'll stop barking. And I know that the sirens really hurt their ears. So like, I don't get mad at that because I don't appreciate loud sounds either. And so they're receiving the sound, they're reflecting on it and identifying that this is not desirable, and they're responding by trying to get the sirens to go somewhere else, and this ability for me to see improviding throughout my life, and even like how that process is something that my dogs are modeling. Like, yeah, sure, they're not intentionally thinking, oh, this is step one, or no, but when I see that, what I see is the actual like life experience is something that living beings are experiencing, and it helps me find more harmony, and seeing their innate responses to life allows me to then connect to things like my animal spirit oracle cards and see how we're all connected to this broader universe, and really have a more nuanced perspective. And so what can you do to really tap into buffalo energy? Actually related to oracle cards in many ways is have an intentional prayer, meditation, spiritual practice of some sort this week. And if you don't already have one, it can really feel like there's a big access barrier to starting. Like we are told what this like idea of what spirituality looks like. And that's one of the things that I want to challenge. It's really what feels nourishing to you, what allows you to really see yourself more deeply, and then connect to whatever it ends up being, a connection to that helps you feel part of something larger than yourself in a way that lets you know that there are other parts of your experience that have your back as well. And so if you feel like there might be a bit of overwhelm with how do you start a spiritual practice, I actually suggest journaling as the first start. And that might not seem spiritual, but it's a ritual that you can then begin. I journal 3 times a week, or I journal whenever I'm starting to feel icky and I don't really know where the source is coming from. That is, in a very supportive way to yourself, something that can end up taking on a spiritual component, because you're able to sit with your accurate location. And again, accurate location is like where and how you are in that moment, and then knowing that allows you to then dig in and really unearth why those conditions are what they are and what can be done about them, what's in your control and what's out of your control. And so if you already have a spiritual practice, feel free to reach out and share what that is. I'm always interested in hearing what resonates with people, because I don't believe that there's one right way, and I don't believe that there are like wrong ways. If there's an intentional practice that feels really good to you that you may not even realize is nourishing, that is, to me, what spirituality is about. It's something that connects you to your own humanity, to your own human experience, to that of others. And so, yeah, it might be gardening, it might be cooking with your family, it might be playing cards with your grandmas. Anything that feels so rejuvenating to you can be that practice. And so as you're going through this practice this week, you can really lean into this buffalo energy of how does my expertise in my own life existence really allow me to then be the author of my experience, or the weight of my experience, the what I'm leaving this moment with. And I call this the avatar to author pivot. And I will be releasing and hosting a program for that soon. And so it's really about realizing that before we get to this place of intentionality, we are being conditioned, and the conditioning doesn't stop, but we're being conditioned while on autopilot, so we don't necessarily know that it's happening because it's expected. It's something we are told to allow and accept. And so then we are avatars. Our experience feels very avatarish in a way. It's almost like being in Sims, where you're getting this coding in and saying, okay, go to this room. Then you're like, oh, it's 8 o'clock, gotta go to this room. And you get in this flow where like days, weeks, months go by, and you know that you got to the place you are somehow because you're still there. But you may be losing sight of the actual weight of what's happened in between. Like, there might have been things that were super great and juicy, but you didn't take the time to celebrate because you didn't realize that you can celebrate the wins in between, the big monumental things that people tell us to value the most, like relationship things, or like the huge promotion that took you 11 years. What happened in those 11 years in between that felt really rad, but you didn't celebrate it because you were told that it was insignificant by someone else? And then shifting and undoing these baggage, really knowing where your story comes from, which parts of it are actually your story, and what is the sort of like coding manual and the instruction manual that you were given. And then through that process, you're then able to see like what authorship would feel like for you. How can you authorize yourself to have this intentional living, and what that means to you even. And so sitting with that and with the buffalo, it's really, again, like how can you, again, be rooted into your reality and really dig in and see where that reality is coming from, what's impacting it, and then stretching out, again, existing, being as big as you want to be. And even if that means you want to do it in a really subtle way, you can have space for all of that. And so I hope this week the buffalo reminds you to yes and your current situationships. Everything you're experiencing is so real, and the impact on you is real. And there are ways that we can empower ourselves to have a different language we speak to ourselves, that we can make space for this inner knowing to come in, and we can make space to receive feedback and constructive criticism from those around us. Really see how our actions, which may up until this point have not been something we were intentionally aware of, have but impacting others. And how can we see that as opportunities to, again, really be connected to something beyond ourselves? And when we do that, how does that allow you to then feel a different sureness of self? And really doing that inner work, so that way when you're in more like outer spaces is what I think of it as, or any relationship or moment involving someone else, that you know and can identify and resonate with how it feels best for you to show up in that space that respects your boundaries, their boundaries, and really limits the potential for any harm for others or self. Because again, the more harm we're doing to ourselves or out to others, it's more of those bags that we're gonna have to look through and sort out. And so, yeah, that was a bit of information, but I really value the fact that you're sitting here and you've watched all of this. And it really felt like a mini training. So you now know what the buffalo energy is going to be like this week. You know more about improviding and where it comes from, more of the actual thought behind it, and the systemic relationship and life navigation that really came from. And then also a few techniques on how to do that, and really like what are in your bags. So thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, or if you're interested in the program that I was sharing with you, that will really be allowing you to allow yourself, really it's called Permission Pathway. So how can you give yourself permission to make that avatar to author pivot, because it really is doing deeper inner work. And so leading up to that actually will be, I think of it as the on-ramp offering will be called Yes and Yesterday. And it will be, how do you do the more surface level processing on a day-to-day basis and just work that muscle, realize what you are taking in each day, and then looking at the residue from the day before. So the language around that and the real groundwork is recharging your residue. And that notion came to me after doing this practice myself and realizing how impactful it was. So it's really realizing, like, we all have residue from day to day. How can we recharge it? How can the parts that feel really nourishing from the day before allow us to then approach the parts that were really heavy or gunky and be able to receive, reflect, respond to them, and then really have that processing in real time as much as possible, so that way it's not adding another bag every day. Because if we continue that way, we're just going to become more ill, more burnt out, and more disconnected from ourselves and how we're really experiencing life. And so if you have any questions, please reach out again. We will be doing the Yes and Yesterday, and that will be happening later this month. And then June will really be that transition into Permission Pathway, which is just so exciting. I'm really excited for it. I hope that you can feel that. I'm sending that. So I want to just leave you with those tidbits and the buffalo energy. And if you do have any yoga familiarity before this week, I encourage you to do as many tree poses as possible, because that feels very buffalo to me. You're rooted in, yet you're able to reach out and just really connect with what it feels like to exist, to take up space. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for relocating with Lori Robin. And thank you for being you.